When I first got serious about reselling, it was standard practice for clothing resellers to sell shoes as well. And people still do that, but it's a specific kind of shoe that they typically sell. I don't see people talking about dress shoes that much anymore. Maybe I'm just missing it, but it seems like this is now arcane, forgotten knowledge in reselling, which is weird because it used to be so ubiquitous. It was such a common thing for people to resell. Maybe COVID had a big impact on the market, or maybe people just got sick of selling them because they do take a lot of work, but you can make really good money, or at least you could, and according to eBay still can make really good money. So I searched for pre-owned dress shoes in the men's category. There's about 40K sold and 150K active. So the sell-through for dress shoes in pre-owned condition generally not superb. However, there is a very high ceiling of the amount of money that can be made on used dress shoes. And if you find the right pair, something like this, something like this, something like this, you can make a ton of money. And speaking only from my experience selling them in the past a few years ago, it was not that hard to find pairs of shoes that were worth more than $100. So I'm going to give you some ideas of brands to look for, and we'll dig into some listings, and I'll give you some tips and tricks and terminology for selling them as I remember doing it. The first brand that I found is Oliver Sweeney, 72 sold to 315. However, the average sale price is over $50. A lot of stuff selling for over 100. I show you this because this is typical of like middle of the road dress shoe brands. You may not sell everything for $100, but if you find something like these, which are unassuming, inconspicuous, not something that a bunch of resellers are going to be looking at because they look ratty and dumpy. But if you happen to know Oliver Sweeney and you're tooled up to sell dress shoes, you find these, you can sell these for what, 50, 60, 70 bucks, something like that. That's kind of the magic of dress shoes. Here's another brand that I found. I just searched on eBay, sold listings for over 100 bucks. Tons and tons of dress shoe brands to know. This is just a handful of them, about 1/3 sell through. But as you can see, the prices can be phenomenal. I would say that a big proportion of my sales that were over $200 over the course of my reselling career were dress shoes. One of the nice things about dress shoes is they're not counterfeited nearly as much as sneakers. The competition for them is also much lower because they're not as sexy to the general population. The competition is just lower. No one really cares about them. Everybody cares about sneakers. They are more work. It takes quite a bit of effort to prep and photograph and ship them. They're not as easy as clothing on that front. So keep that in mind. Here's another good example of a shoe that almost nobody is going to clock at a Goodwill as being worth 200 bucks, which is what this sold for. This logo right here, Bally, is another good logo to know. I remember that's a really good dress shoe brand. But look at these. These don't look, even to my relatively well-trained eye, to be something valuable with these big, luggy soles. And they just look like something you'd get at Nordstrom. Here's some terminology for you. This is what's called a derby shoe. There are two different kinds, major categories of proper dress shoes, derbies and oxfords. And it is determined by this lacing style. You see how there are these two flaps that fold in, one on the other? This is a derby, and I'll find an example of an oxford, but the oxfords are the ones that just have one seam straight up the middle that's connected right down here, so it just splits open in a V shape. That is an oxford, and that is actually important terminology to know. The more terminology that you have with reselling generally, and with dress shoes, the more you'll be able to pinpoint specific buyers, collectors, or people who are really deep into this kind of stuff. And if you can signal to them that you're in the know, that you're competent, that you know what you're doing, it will instill more confidence in them, and you can potentially get more money for your stuff. My expertise was and is clothing. If you're curious about selling men's clothing, I have this product called the Menswear Manifesto. It's on its Fourth iteration, it's now 160 pages long. It's 401 men's clothing brands that I've broken down fairly painstakingly by sell-through rate and by average price. And I also give detailed notes about what I observe selling and not selling, sometimes in quite a high volume. It's pay what you want and it pays for itself. So if you like this, you want to use it, figure out how much you think it's worth and give me that for it, please. Link is in the description. There's also a supplement of 50 additional new brands. Link to that is also in the description. This is a great brand to know. Salvatore Ferragamo is an Italian brand that makes clothing as well as shoes, and I've had great luck selling Ferragamo shoes. 2,300 sold to around 5,000 active, so about 50%, just sub 50% sell through. Take a look at the sale prices though. Big range, as is typically going to be the case with all these brands, but lots of them selling for over $100. These are loafers, leather loafers. Those are called penny loafers. They are technically dress shoes, so I guess Oxford derbies and loafers, and I would say probably driving moccasins fit in there. So I take back what I said about 2 categories of dress shoes. There's 4. Derbies and Oxfords and loafers are the 3 most common. One really important thing to be aware of with dress shoes is that the sizing works differently than with sneakers and other kinds of casual shoes. You see the letter? This denotes the width of the shoe. D is medium width, and I think E's go up to wider and wider. There's a little chart here. So yeah, D is medium, and then the more E's, the wider, and then it goes down into the A's. Just something to remember. Most of them are going to be D, but occasionally you'll find ones that aren't. This is also a good piece of terminology. The perforations in the leather, that's called broguing. So these are brogue shoes or brogues. Allen Edmonds used to be such a popular brand to hear about on Reselling YouTube. I haven't heard this talked about in a long time. Again, maybe I'm just not listening closely enough. 8,000 to 21,000. So the sell-through isn't great. Allen Edmonds is a big brand, and it's kind of like the big clothing brands. You have to be pretty accurate in what you pick up and what you avoid. A lot of it is pretty common. I don't recall off the top of my head which of the cuts are the best. However, Allen Edmonds is nice in that typically they include the name of the shoe line in the sole. There it is, Park Avenue. So it takes out a lot of the guesswork for you. It's an easy brand to look up and sell. And tons of Allen Edmonds shoes are worth over $100. Unfortunately, their clothing typically doesn't do as well on the resale market, but those are Oxfords. And once again, would these scream money to you if you stumbled into them or onto them at a thrift store? Probably not, and probably not for most people. And this is typical of dress shoe readouts, like the info. The 11 is the size, B is the width, and then they have these other designations here that are specific to the brand. You're not typically going to find this information on the underside of the lip in the way that you will with sneakers. It's usually going to be on the side here. And be careful if you find dress shoes where this information is rubbed off, which will happen with older pairs of shoes. If you don't have size information, it can be really challenging to list and sell shoes. I would do it only if you know that it's a superbly valuable brand. Otherwise, I would probably avoid those unless you want to take the time to hand measure and estimate a size, which can be hit or miss. Polo Ralph is a decent middle-of-the-road bread and butter brand. The sell-through is better than I would have anticipated it being, and as you can see, there are opportunities to sell stuff for some really good money, over $100. These look like Cole Haans, these look like nothing, these look like they could be really cheap, and they have all this wear. You have to be careful with dress shoes with the soles. If they're too worn down, if they're too thin, there are exceptions, of course. If it's stuff that's worth hundreds of bucks, then who cares? But something like this, I would just be cautious, make sure that there's not any major damage, that the soles are not about to get holes in the bottom, and also be cautious of heel wear. Typically, you will see quite a bit of indentation on a lot of pairs of used dress shoes right in here, because this is where a lot of people heel strike and this gets worn down. That diminishes the value of dress shoes. Sometimes you see it on different parts, but the more straight, the more flat they sit, the better. Alden is a great brand. I recall that they are a made in America brand, which is part of the appeal. They're very old, really healthy sell-through, and you will see a lot of Alden shoes sell for really good money. We don't know exactly how much that was, but look at all these over $100, a ton of them over 200. This one sold for 270 bucks. This is made of a kind of leather called shell cordovan that is very rare and very expensive and is made from a particular part of a cow's anatomy. It's like part of the rump or something, and it's very resilient to wrinkling. So most dress shoes, you'll see in this area here that there will be little, almost like crow's feet on the edges here. So you see here, this is a pair of non-shell cordovan leather loafers from Polo Ralph. You can see like this creasing in here, these little micro wrinkles. And on the shell cordovan, it just doesn't happen because it's so thick and it's so smooth, and you can kind of develop an eye for it. Shell cordovan anything typically is in really good demand and worth a lot of money. This is also a good thing to know. As I recall, you see the little nails in the soles here. This is typically a sign that a shoe is bench made, meaning made by a cobbler on a cobbling bench, not made in a factory by automated processes. There may be exceptions to that, but these nails in the soles can be a good giveaway that it's a more expensive pair of shoes. Florsheim is middle of the road, kind of bread and butter. You have to be careful with it because the sell-through isn't that great and a lot of it's pretty junky. But I have done really well with certain kinds of Florsheim, especially the Florsheim Imperial. This is another one with shell cordovan. I'll show you another example of this. See how just immaculately smooth and glossy it is? That is shell cordovan, and even if you wear it for a long time, it just doesn't get those wrinkles. The Florsheim Imperials are not all worth money, but a lot of them are. They have these big fat soles. A lot of Florsheim is going to sell in this zone. Magnani is, let's venture a guess, an Italian shoe brand. $869 sold to over 2,000 actives. But another one, a lot of them selling for around 50, and periodically they will sell for over 100. Here's some collaborative sneakers that sold for a ton of money. Here's some that sold for 300 bucks. These look like they're to be worn with a tuxedo. Made in Spain. If you find dress shoes that are made in Europe, probably look them up. To Boot New York, I had pretty good luck with. This is a more contemporary dress shoe brand. A lot of these are going to be vintage, the ones that are worth a lot of money. These are okay sell-through. A lot of them sell for around 50, and then periodically you'll flip them for over 100. Here's some with some Vibram lug soles. Sometimes these big lug soles can actually prefer a little bit of value. See, you can see the wrinkling already in that leather that you wouldn't see with the cordovan. These are Oxford shoes. Just really nice condition, good soles. Again, better shape the soles are in, the more easily you're going to be able to sell them probably. A little bit of distortion there, but there's the To Boot New York logo. Had some pretty good luck with them. Bruno Magli, another European dress shoe brand with a big range, but high highs. These are, it looks like alligator leather. Crocodile, genuine crocodile. If you find exotic leathers like this, and it's real, it's not pleather that's formed to look like crocodile or ostrich or whatever, then it probably is worth more money. Crocodile and alligator are pretty popular. Ostrich is the kind of leather that has the, it looks like pimples, like repeating pimples. Those are pores for feathers that are really large and conspicuous. You'll know it when you see it. 280 bucks. I've sold some alligator and crocodile shoes. They do well. Crockett and Jones, 322, sold to 647. See, these are like sort of long tail, but they're not terrible. Just a nice pair of dress shoes, sold for $185-ish with a little scuff on the toe, a couple little blemishes. And Ermenegildo Zegna makes shoes. The dress shoes sell for some decent money. Let's talk about The difficulties of selling dress shoes, one of the big obstacles is they take a lot of prep. You have to clean them, and you probably should do some touch-up and polishing. I ended up abandoning that because it was so labor intensive, and I would try to pitch that as a positive. I would say in the ad or in the listing description, like, I didn't do any touch-up. This is the true condition of the shoes. You're seeing them as they really are. I didn't do any, smoke and mirror stuff to make them look better. I don't know how well that really worked. I think that was kind of laziness, but polishing and prepping and touching up dress shoes is its own art, and it is a fairly time and labor intensive process to do it really well. One thing, if you're interested in looking into it, is maybe you just want to do a basic polish. Maybe you can get one of those Kiwi hand polishers. It's like a sponge that has shoe polish, liquid shoe polish reservoir behind it. You can just kind of rub it. I think that would be time saving. Look into edge dressing. It's a kind of dye that you can use to touch up the edge of the soles that are typically black or dark brown. And also, one thing to keep in mind is a lot of thrift stores will write the prices of the shoes in Sharpie on the leather soles. And this is a whole situation. This is a whole conundrum everybody has a home remedy for, and I've tried most of them, and none of them work all that well. The only foolproof way is to sand the leather sole down in that spot, but it can make it look kind of gnarly. So keep that in mind. One trick that I heard and that I tried was, let's say you find a pair of shoes for $14.99 at a thrift store. You can't get the Sharpie off. Sneak a sneaky little 1 in Sharpie in front of the price, so it'll look like you got it for more, because people don't like knowing that they're having arbitrage done on them. Even though we all know consciously that this is the core mechanic of the economy, that everything that we buy is marked up. People don't like that being conspicuous. People will know if you do that trick. I got caught, and I got a couple of really angry messages from buyers excoriating me for doing this. And in retrospect, it is kind of dishonest. I wouldn't do it again, and it makes you look tacky. But if you want to do it, you can do it. Prepping and photographing are both pretty intensive. It's a way different process than selling clothing, and storing it can be a challenge. I would use the USPS Tyvek envelopes to store them so that they would be protected from scuffs and scrapes. And when I was selling a lot of shoes, I also bought like a $30 plastic shoe rack off of Amazon. It was like big, it was as tall as I was, and you can fit, I think, something like 20 pairs of shoes in those. But the shoes do take up space. There may be better solutions, but it's a niche that really works best if you have a big garage or a storage unit or a lot of room to put in racks and store a whole bunch of stuff. It's not like clothing, like t-shirts or ties, where you can condense a lot of inventory into a small space. It just doesn't work like that. However, all that being said, per unit, you can make way more profit on average on dress shoes than you can with used clothing. If you feel like walking in the footsteps of the ancients and trying out this niche, I think you may be surprised, especially if you live in a big city and you shop in thrift stores that are in really rich areas, how relatively easy it is to find some good money in dress shoes. And it is a pain to sell these, but reselling is a pain. You may find that it's worth your time. Thanks for watching. Hope it makes you some money.